You rolling?
Yeah.
All right. My name's Rob Heule, and you're tuned into the Low Pressure Podcast.
And then you get a reason to come out to Whistler.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. It's a nice little vacation from my job, Christmas light hanging. It always kind of breaks up the end of the Christmas light hanging season.
A little monotony. Oh, yeah. Talk about that. Like, so you've been doing this for many years, right?
Yeah, I think I looked back, and I think the first year I did it was like maybe 2010. So maybe I've been doing it for 9 years or something like that. But it was always like a really good job in the fall before ski season
A
started.
lot of skiers have done that or
to make
still
money,
do.
yeah.
Like
The
Benello
fellas-
used to do it too.
Yeah,
didn't he?
totally. Yeah, the guy I work with, he used to work with Anthony Bonello. But the company we work for, it's called Assiniboine, and the fellow who started that company, it's like they call it Assiniboine Lights and Landscape because they do landscape work in the summer. But the fellow Brandon who started that business, he used to run the website Big Lines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he was like the Big Lines guy, and everybody from Big Lines used to hang Christmas lights.
And all the people that knew him, like Matty Richard and
exactly, yeah, all the ski bums
like Dahmer and all
would
those
come to
crew.
Calgary and do it, and so
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people doing it out here in Whistler too.
Pretty
but-
sketchy job though, right?
a little bit. I mean, we used to.
like I was asking you yesterday, like, oh, we're doing all like the big trees and
Yeah,
stuff around
yeah.
town. I'm like, what do you just like rent a man boom? He's like, no, we climb
We
up
climb
the
'em,
middle.
yeah. You throw on a climbing harness and a big backpack of lights, and you kind of climb up these big spruce trees, and you take a big kind of extendable window washing pole up with you. We just tape a little tent spike onto the end of it, and it kind of makes a little fork on the end of the pole, and you push the lights out from the inside of the tree and kind of spiral them all the way down till you can reach it from the ground with these 5 sections of
So do you have
extendable
like a
window washing
Do you
pole
have
kind of
like a when you see like logging sports
yeah
and they've got like the little like waist harness where you can kind of lean back because you need your hands free for this.
You do
right?
totally. I mean, there's arborist harnesses out there that you can get, but they're like that's what my friend Joel uses, who I work with. But they're quite heavy, and like there's a lot going on them. I just wear like a climbing harness to do it, and you kind of wrap your tether around the trunk of the tree, and it holds you on there pretty well. So never had any accidents yet, knock on wood. But
Yeah.
we actually had the craziest thing that ever happened Christmas light hanging, and the closest I've ever seen somebody come to like dying was light hanging. And there's this development in Calgary. It's called the East Village, and it was sort of like a rough area of Calgary, but they were kind of gentrifying it and throwing up a bunch of condo buildings. So
Condos and Christmas lights.
yeah, well, they go hand in hand, I guess.
Yeah.
But so this developer called us to set up some lights for them, and we got our work order in the morning. Every morning we get a work list of the jobs we have to do, and we see this East Village on the work order, and we see that they want 120 strands set up in a tree, and we're like, no, this must be a typo. They probably want 12 strands. Like that's kind of average for, well, a big tree is maybe. For a big tree, you maybe use 20 or 30 strands.
And they're like, what, 30-foot strands or something?
Yeah,
like that?
something like that. Like
Yeah.
we charge by the foot, but yeah,
Yeah.
I think they're 20 feet or 30 feet or something. But 120 strands is like a lot of Christmas lights. That's like probably the Christmas lights would probably stretch from Vancouver to Calgary.
Yeah,
Or
right.
at least from Calgary to Whistler.
Yeah, right.
Or Vancouver to Whistler. No, but yeah. So we see this 120 strands of lights on the work order, and we're going, this has got to be wrong. So we show up at this job, and sure enough, this lady has 120 strands of lights for us to put in this tree.
Now, do you have to like? Is it responsibility of the client to purchase the lights? Like,
Yeah,
what-
it's cheaper if they do it that way.
And if-
like
and then
they'll
they
go
know,
out to
yeah.
Canadian Tire and buy it, because if we bring the lights, we sell them at a marked up charge. So
Yeah.
you're kind of an idiot
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you don't buy your own lights. But people don't care. They have more money than they know what to do with. So anyway, so we show up, and she's got these 120 strands of lights, which is I don't know what that would cost you at the start. Probably a couple $1,000 to get that many sets of those
Wow.
LED lights. But this tree she's showing us is like pretty small. It's not that big, and we're like, if you want us to put this many lights in the tree, we'll try as hard as we can to get them in. So we wrapped it once from the top down, twice from the top down, 3 times from the top down, and I think we even maybe went around a 4th time and finally got all these lights up. And because you're charging by the foot, like we ended up making like $3,000 doing that job like in an afternoon kind of thing. So it was like such a creamy job. So a year rolls by and we're doing it again the next year. We see
Same lady,
East Village
same
pop
tree.
up, and we see that this year she's got 2 trees
Yeah.
to do. So we're like, all right, 240 strands, like in 2 trees, like we're gonna be like rich by the end of this afternoon. So we get down there, and sure enough, she's got 2 trees. But this year they've decided, the thing I didn't explain though at first was the tree wasn't actually planted in the ground. It was in like a concrete cylinder, like the garden center had brought it in because there was no trees down in this part of the city. So they brought one in from, out east of town or something like that, from a garden center, and had just kind of plunked it into this, it was like a concrete cylinder with a bunch of dirt and backfill and stuff to kind of hold the tree in there. So yeah, first year was easy. Second year we show up and they have 2 trees, and they're a little bigger this year, and they're in these concrete kind of planter pots, and they've got these guide wires out from the tree going to these like concrete parking barriers to kind of support the tree.
Yeah.
So we're thinking like those things are just gonna get in our way. Like there's no way that they're providing much support for the actual tree. So we'll take them down. So we take these guide wires down, and the tree's looking good. It's still standing, and Joel climbs up the tree and has his bag of lights up there, and he's put up like maybe 60 or 70 of these strands.
How big
in
is
the
this tree? Like
it's maybe
20, 30 feet
well,
tall?
big enough that we couldn't reach with the pole from the bottom, because
Yeah.
normally if it's a smaller tree we can just reach with the pole, but as soon as the tree gets to be a certain height you pretty much have to climb it to go up and put the lights up. So Joel's up this tree setting up lights, and he's gotten to a point where we think we can reach it again from the ground with the big long pole. So he gets down out of the tree, and we're strapping up these guide wires again, because we've gotten the lights down to a point that's below where the guide wire is attached to the tree, sort of thing. And Joel comes down, it's back on the ground. I'm pulling on these wires, like retensioning the turnbuckles to like tighten it back up. And I'm pulling on the 3rd wire, and all of a sudden there's a bit more give in the wire than I think there should be. And I kind of look up behind me, and I'm like, holy fuck, this Christmas tree is coming down on our heads. Like, we're like, get out of the way. So we get out of the way as quick as we can, and this whole tree comes down to the ground with about 70 strands of Christmas lights in it already, and it's just a disaster. We've totally fucked up this tree. There's broken branches everywhere, broken Christmas lights, and we kind of just stepped back for a second and realized that about 5 minutes earlier, Joel had been up in the top of that tree with no wires attached to it, like very like 30 feet off the ground probably,
like
and
ride it down and then jump and roll at the end, sort of thing.
Yeah, and it turned out that these guide wires were the only things that were holding the tree up. There was about probably 3 or 4 inches of stump in this concrete pot that were doing nothing to hold it up. So I don't know. We got away with Joel cheated death on that one, basically, is what it came down to. So we got in the truck, we drove away and got a coffee, I think, and just like kind of soaked it all in for a second. We were like, that could have been really, really bad. And needless to say, we never got called back to that job again. And I think Joel had to pay for it out of his light hanging money. So it ended up like this super creamy, like good job ended up just being this total disaster, and like pretty close to death experience for him. Yeah. So it was that's like my wildest Christmas light hanging story.
That would change the holiday season for you forever moving forward.
Yeah, 100%. And now the guy we buy lights off at Canadian Tire, every time we go in there, he thinks we're gonna have a story that'll top that one, but nothing's quite topped it yet.
You've been listening to the Low Pressure Podcast, the podcast for skiers. This has been a Redmark Media production.